NASA's latest announcement has shaken both the scientific community and the public alike. The Perseverance rover has uncovered what may be the strongest evidence yet of ancient life on Mars. For generations, humanity has speculated about whether we are alone, whether Mars once had inhabitants, and whether the red planet hides the secrets of biology in its dusty rocks. Now, with Perseverance's discovery, that speculation feels closer than ever to becoming reality. This is not just another rover finding. This could be the moment that changes how we see ourselves in the universe. The question is no longer just, is there life out there? But rather, have we just found proof that life once thrived on a neighboring world? Perseverance's mission on Mars is one of the most ambitious undertakings in the history of planetary exploration. It is not simply a rover designed to photograph landscapes or roll across the Martian surface like its predecessors. Instead, Perseverance represents the culmination of decades of scientific progress, engineering innovation, and humanity's relentless desire to answer one of the most profound questions ever asked. Are we alone in the universe? Unlike earlier missions such as Spirit, Opportunity, and even Curiosity, which primarily studied geology and surface conditions to determine Mars's habitability, Perseverance was specifically designed with life detection in mind. Its role was clear from the beginning: to search for biosignatures, chemical markers, and textural evidence that might reveal that microbes once thrived on the red planet billions of years ago. NASA chose Jezero Crater as Perseverance's landing site after years of rigorous analysis and debate. Jezero is a 45-kilometer wide impact crater that billions of years ago hosted a lake, with a river flowing into it and depositing sediments. These sediments built up a river delta, one of the most promising environments for preserving evidence of past life. On Earth, river deltas and ancient lake beds are some of the richest archives of biological history. They trap organic material, minerals, and microfossils in fine-grained sediments, locking them away for billions of years. Scientists hypothesized that if life ever arose on Mars, or if microbial ecosystems once flourished in water-rich environments, then Jezero Crater would be one of the best possible places to find their traces. The selection of Jezero was not a random gamble. Remote sensing data from orbiters like Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, revealed hydrated minerals, clays, and carbonates scattered across the region, the types of materials known to preserve biological matter on Earth. What made Jezero particularly fascinating was the presence of carbonates along its edges. On our planet, carbonates often form in shallow water environments where microbial mats and biofilms thrive. They act like time capsules, encasing microbial textures and organic matter in stone. For astrobiologists, Jezero offered the closest thing Mars could provide to a fossil record, waiting to be uncovered. Perseverance's mission objectives reflect this scientific potential. Its primary tasks include characterizing the geology of Jezero Crater, searching for signs of ancient microbial life, collecting carefully selected rock and soil samples for eventual return to Earth, and testing new technologies that will prepare the way for future human missions. Each of these goals feeds into the central question: did Mars once support life? While Perseverance cannot confirm the existence of life on its own, its instruments are not equipped to give absolute proof. It was designed to gather the strongest possible evidence and prepare samples for Earth laboratories, where the most advanced tests can be performed. To accomplish this, Perseverance carries a suite of highly advanced instruments. These include Sherlock, scanning habitable environments with Raman and luminescence for organics and chemicals, which uses spectroscopic techniques to detect organic molecules and map their distribution within rocks. Pixel, planetary instrument for X-ray lithochemistry, which provides high-resolution chemical analysis of rock surfaces. and SuperCam, which uses laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy to study the composition of rocks from a distance. In addition to these, Perseverance is equipped with a coring drill, the most sophisticated ever sent to another planet, capable of extracting core samples and sealing them into tubes that will one day be returned to Earth. This capability is historic, marking the first time humanity has prepared to bring back samples from another planet. Another groundbreaking aspect of Perseverance's mission is its emphasis on habitability. Instead of looking for life in the present, the rover focuses on reconstructing Mars's ancient environments. Scientists believe that around 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, Mars had abundant surface water, lakes, rivers, and perhaps even shallow seas. Its atmosphere was thicker, its climate warmer, and conditions may have been remarkably similar to early Earth. If microbial life arose during this era on Earth, as the fossil record suggests, then Mars too might have had the right ingredients. Perseverance's job is to dig into those sediments, to search for biosignatures, subtle patterns in minerals, organics, and textures that hint at biological processes rather than purely chemical ones. But Perseverance's mission goes beyond pure science. It also serves as a technology demonstrator for the future of Mars exploration. One of its most revolutionary achievements was carrying the Ingenuity helicopter, the first powered aircraft ever to fly on another planet. While not directly tied to life detection, Ingenuity has proven that aerial exploration is possible, opening up new ways to scout terrain and guide rovers. Perseverance also tested the MOXYE, Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment instrument, which successfully produced oxygen from the Martian atmosphere, an innovation crucial for future human missions. These technologies tie Perseverance's work to a broader vision, one where humans may one day walk on Mars and continue the search for life with tools no rover could ever carry. The heart of Perseverance's mission, however, always circles back to Jazero's sediments. Every drill site, every core tube, and every chemical scan is part of an unfolding detective story, piecing together how water once shaped Mars, whether it fostered microbial colonies, and whether any traces of those colonies remain locked in stone. Perseverance is essentially a robotic geobiologist, sifting through the geologic record for whispers of biology. The rover's daily work may look methodical and slow, but in reality, each core sample could hold answers to questions humanity has asked for centuries. What makes Perseverance's mission unique is that it represents the first time NASA has explicitly set out with life detection as its primary scientific justification. Earlier rovers laid the groundwork. Spirit and Opportunity showed Mars had once been wet. Curiosity confirmed that ancient Mars had habitable conditions, but Perseverance is the one equipped to push the boundary further, not just proving that Mars could have supported life, but actively searching for the fingerprints of that life. This evolution mirrors the growing confidence of the scientific community. For decades, the search for life was seen as speculative, even fringe. But with each mission, evidence accumulated. Water once flowed here, lakes once pooled here, organics exist here. Now, with Perseverance, NASA has taken the leap, saying, if life ever existed on Mars, this rover has the best chance to find its traces. When we speak about the search for life on Mars, we inevitably return to one location that has captured the imagination of scientists for years: Jezero Crater. Today, it appears as a dry, dusty bowl carved into the Martian surface, but billions of years ago, it was something entirely different. Jezero was once a thriving lake system, filled with water that flowed in from rivers winding across the Martian landscape. Satellite images from orbit reveal the unmistakable features of a river delta: winding channels, fan-shaped deposits, and sediment layers. The same geological fingerprints we see on Earth where rivers empty into lakes and seas. For astrobiologists, that makes Jezero an extraordinary time capsule. It is not just another crater, it is a preserved remnant of Mars's watery past, a place where life, if it ever existed, might have found a stable and nurturing home. Billions of years ago, when Earth was still young and life was just beginning to emerge in the form of primitive microbes, Mars was undergoing its own dramatic transformation. Its climate was warmer, its atmosphere denser, and liquid water was stable at the surface. In this window of time, Jezero crater acted as a natural basin, collecting river water and sediments over countless millennia. The water brought with it minerals, nutrients, and possibly even organic material, all of which were deposited layer by layer in the lakebed. On Earth, such environments are treasure troves for paleontologists and geologists alike, because lake sediments preserve records of both environmental conditions and biological activity. If microbes once lived in Mars's waters, Jezero would be one of the most promising places to find their traces. The delta at Jezero is particularly significant because deltas act as natural sediment traps. As rivers slow down upon entering a lake, the suspended particles they carry, clays, organics, carbonates, settle to the bottom. Over time, these sediments build up into thick, finely layered deposits, locking away the chemical fingerprints of the environment and potentially preserving biosignatures. On Earth, some of the most convincing evidence of ancient microbial life comes from such deposits, where microscopic structures and chemical signatures are embedded in rocks billions of years old. By analogy, the Jezero Delta could hold a Martian fossil record, hidden within its stratified rocks, waiting for perseverance to uncover. What makes Jezero even more exciting is the diversity of environments within a relatively small area. Scientists have identified at least 5 distinct geological units in and around the crater: the delta deposits, lake sediments, carbonate-bearing rocks at the crater rim, volcanic deposits, and ancient river channels. Each of these offers a different perspective on Mars' history. The carbonate-rich regions are particularly tantalizing because on Earth, carbonates often form in shallow, life-friendly waters and can preserve microbial textures for billions of years. The fact that Jezero has both carbonate deposits and a preserved river delta makes it stand out among all possible landing sites as the single best candidate to preserve signs of ancient Martian biology. But Jezero is not just scientifically significant, it is also symbolic. The very act of sending perseverance into a crater that once held a lake connects us to Mars in a deeply human way. We are used to seeing water as synonymous with life. Every time we search for life elsewhere in the solar system, whether on Europa's subsurface ocean, Enceladus's geysers, or Titan's methane lakes, we begin with the question, was there water? Jezero answers that question with a resounding yes. Not only was there water, but it persisted long enough to carve rivers, deposit sediments, and maintain a lake system that could have lasted thousands, if not millions, of years. That span of time would have been more than enough for microbial ecosystems to establish themselves, adapt, and potentially leave behind traces in the sediments that we now see as rock. From orbit, the Jezero Delta looks hauntingly familiar, almost like a dried-up delta here on Earth. Its fan-shaped outline mirrors places like the Mississippi River Delta or the Okavango Delta. This striking resemblance adds to the intrigue because it suggests that processes shaping landscapes on Earth and Mars are not so different. Both planets were sculpted by the flow of water, and both carry records of those ancient rivers in their geology. For scientists, this familiarity is a gift, allowing them to apply knowledge from Earth's sedimentology and microbiology to Mars with a surprising degree of confidence. The crater also serves as a geological boundary marker. Its rocks span billions of years, offering a timeline of Mars' environmental evolution. At the bottom of Jezero's sediments, one might find evidence of Mars's earliest habitable conditions, while higher layers might record the planet's gradual shift to the cold, arid world we see today. This layered history is like a book with chapters written in stone, waiting for Perseverance to turn the pages. By sampling these layers, the rover is not just collecting rocks, it is gathering a story of Mars itself, its climate, its water, and perhaps its biology. Choosing Jezero as the landing site was not without controversy. Other locations, such as Northeast Syrtis and Columbia Hills, also showed promise. But Jezero ultimately won because it offered the best chance to fulfill Perseverance's mission goal: to search for evidence of ancient microbial life. The combination of lake sediments, river delta, and carbonate outcrops created a geological jackpot, a rare convergence of factors that maximize the odds of finding biosignatures. The fact that NASA placed its most sophisticated rover yet into this environment underscores just how seriously the agency takes the possibility of Martian life. And now, as Perseverance drills into Jezero's rocks and peers into its sediments with high-tech instruments, the decision to land here is paying off. Already, samples taken from this crater have revealed intriguing mineral combinations, organic molecules, and strange textures that hint at processes we do not yet fully understand. These are the first steps in unraveling a mystery billions of years in the making. Jezero Crater is no longer just a landmark on Mars. It is the stage where humanity may finally discover whether life arose beyond Earth. Deep within Jezero Crater lies a site that has quickly become one of the most scientifically captivating regions Perseverance has explored: the Bright Angel Formation. Unlike the flat stretches of the crater floor or the towering edges of the delta, Bright Angel is a part of an ancient river channel, a place where flowing water once coursed across Mars billions of years ago. To geologists, river channels are not just scars on the landscape. They are conduits of history. They carry sediments, minerals, and organic material from distant regions, concentrating them in layers that can endure for eons. The name Bright Angel itself was inspired by earthly geology. On Earth, the Bright Angel Formation in the Grand Canyon represents a sequence of ancient marine deposits, rich with fossils and sedimentary history. In a similar way, the Martian Bright Angel carries the promise of capturing life's fingerprints, if such fingerprints ever existed on Mars. This region stands out in satellite imagery for its lighter-toned rocks and distinct stratified layers, which indicate that it formed in a watery environment. For scientists, this is a dream come true. River channels are dynamic systems. They deposit fine-grained sediments in calm areas, erode and transport material from upstream, and leave behind chemical markers that can reveal changing environmental conditions. Bright Angel, therefore, is not just a random drilling site. It is a geological archive layered with the potential to tell us what Mars was like during its habitable era. The sediments at Bright Angel are particularly fascinating because they represent transported material. Unlike rocks that form in place, river sediments carry a mixture of elements and minerals from different regions. This means that drilling into Bright Angel might reveal a wider snapshot of Mars's past than sampling a single static location. Imagine a river sweeping through a landscape. It gathers fragments of volcanic rock, clays from eroded hills, carbonates from lake margins, and perhaps even organic matter from microbial communities, if they ever existed. All of this gets deposited in the river channel, where it can remain preserved for billions of years. In this sense, Bright Angel acts as a Martian collector, storing clues from multiple environments and condensing them into one accessible site. When Perseverance drilled into Bright Angel, the samples it collected were not just ordinary stones. They were mudstones and sedimentary rocks that had formed under calm, water-rich conditions. These kinds of rocks are exceptionally good at preserving microtextures, minerals, and organics, because the fine grains settle slowly out of suspension, trapping delicate chemical and biological signals. On Earth, some of the earliest records of microbial life, stromatolites, microfossils, and chemical biosignatures are found in such mudstones. That is why Bright Angel is so critical. If Mars ever hosted life, this is the kind of environment where its traces would most likely be preserved. The scientific excitement around Bright Angel also comes from its stratigraphy. Layers upon layers of sediment can be read like pages in a book, with each layer representing a different chapter in Mars's history. Some may correspond to times of active river flow when the climate was wetter and warmer. Others may represent drier phases, when rivers slowed and sediment settled gently. Together, these layers could reveal not just whether life once existed, but also how Mars' environment changed over time, and whether those changes allowed or extinguished habitable conditions. There is also an important chemical aspect to Bright Angel. Preliminary analysis from Perseverance's instruments revealed unusual mineral signatures here, minerals that, on Earth, can sometimes form through biological activity. The discovery of ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide in these rocks suggests chemical processes that could be tied to microbial metabolism. While these findings do not confirm biology, they elevate Bright Angel as one of the most compelling sites explored so far. Scientists are now carefully cataloguing these minerals, mapping their distribution, and comparing them to known biosignatures on Earth. But Bright Angel is more than just a promising drill site. It represents a transition in how we view Mars. Earlier missions told us that Mars once had water. Perseverance at Bright Angel is showing us where that water flowed, how it shaped the land, and what it might have carried with it. In other words, this site connects the dots between geology and biology. It transforms the abstract idea of Mars was once habitable into a tangible opportunity to test that hypothesis with real samples. Each core extracted from Bright Angel is a capsule of Martian history, sealed billions of years ago, now being opened for the first time in human history. Scientists believe that what lies inside these samples could finally settle one of the most debated questions of all time. If the chemical and textural evidence in Bright Angel's rocks point toward life, this would be humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial biology, albeit ancient and microbial. Even if the evidence turns out to be abiotic, Bright Angel still offers invaluable information about how Mars's environment evolved. It teaches us about the interplay of water, rock, and chemistry on a world that once looked far more Earth-like than it does today. As Perseverance continues its exploration of Jezero, Bright Angel stands as one of its crowning achievements so far. It is the perfect fusion of geological promise and biological potential, a site where Mars's deep past is written in stone. The rover's work here has already transformed Bright Angel from a faint feature on orbital maps into a landmark of planetary exploration, a place that could one day be remembered as the very spot where humanity first found the evidence it has sought for centuries. Among the many cores Perseverance has collected, one sample in particular has become the centerpiece of NASA's latest announcement, the mudstone core nicknamed Chayava Falls. This rock, extracted from the Bright Angel Formation, is more than just a piece of Mars. It is a fragment of history dating back between 3.2 and 3.8 billion years ago, placing it squarely within the period when Mars was believed to be at its most habitable. On Earth, this same era corresponds to the Archean Eon, when microbial life was thriving in shallow seas, leaving behind some of the earliest biosignatures in our planet's rocks. The fact that Chayava Falls originates from a similar time frame makes it an extraordinary scientific prize, one that could hold answers about whether Mars, too, nurtured life during this epoch. Chayava Falls is a mudstone, and this detail matters immensely. Mudstones form from fine-grained sediments that settle in calm water environments, lakes, riverbeds, or shallow basins, where water flow slows enough for tiny particles to drop out of suspension. Unlike coarse sandstones or conglomerates, mudstones capture subtle chemical signals and preserve them for billions of years. On Earth, such rocks have served as natural vaults for microfossils, microbial mats, and organic compounds, all because their fine grains lock delicate structures in place before they can erode or degrade. The discovery that Chayava Falls is a mudstone means that Perseverance drilled into the kind of environment most favorable to preserving life's traces. The age of the rock only amplifies its importance. Dating back to a period when Mars was wetter, warmer, and still geologically active, Chayava Falls is essentially a frozen snapshot of conditions from the time when life could have plausibly taken root on the planet. Billions of years of erosion, impact cratering, and radiation exposure have stripped much of Mars's surface of its original records. Yet here, within this single mudstone, those records may remain intact. By studying the minerals, chemical composition, and microscopic textures within Chayava Falls, scientists are essentially reaching back into deep time, interrogating a world as it was more than 3 billion years ago. Initial analyses of the sample have already revealed fascinating details. Instruments on Perseverance detected an unusual combination of minerals, including ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide, as well as organic carbon compounds, ingredients that, when found together, raise eyebrows in the astrobiology community. On Earth, such mineral assemblages often form in the presence of microbial processes, especially in aquatic sediments, where microbes interact with iron and sulfur during their metabolism. While these results alone cannot prove that biology was involved in shaping Chayava Falls, they highlight just how perfectly positioned this rock is to answer the question of Martian life. Beyond chemistry, Chayava Falls' very structure may tell a story. In some of the drilled material, Perseverance observed tiny nodules and distinctive textures known as reaction fronts, features that could result from microbial activity altering sediments as they formed. On Earth, similar features are seen in ancient lake and river deposits where microbes left behind mineralized traces of their communities. If these nodules in Chayava Falls are found to be true biosignatures, they would represent the first direct evidence that life once existed on Mars. But even without biology, Chayava Falls is an invaluable geological record. It confirms that Jezero Crater once hosted a long-lived, stable body of water capable of preserving fine sediments for billions of years. This strengthens the argument that Mars was once not only habitable, but also capable of sustaining environments where life could thrive over extended periods. In this way, Chayava Falls bridges the gap between geology and astrobiology, a rock that is both a testament to Mars's watery past and a potential vault for its biological secrets. Perhaps the most significant aspect of Chayava Falls is that its true story cannot be told entirely on Mars. While Perseverance's onboard instruments provide vital clues, the definitive tests, isotopic analyses, scanning electron microscopy, nanoscale chemical mapping can only be conducted in labs on Earth. That is why NASA's Mars Sample Return Program is so critical. Chayava Falls has already been sealed inside a pristine tube, carefully stored aboard the rover, awaiting the ambitious mission that will one day retrieve it and bring it across the interplanetary gulf. If that mission succeeds, Chayava Falls could become one of the most studied rocks in human history, perhaps even the one that answers the age-old question of whether we are alone. In many ways, Chajava Falls symbolizes the heart of Perseverance's mission. It is not a random rock drilled at a random site. It represents the culmination of decades of planning, the careful selection of Jezero Crater, the bold choice to target Bright Angel, and the engineering triumph of building a rover capable of coring, storing, and preserving samples from another planet. More than just mudstone, Chajava Falls is a messenger from Mars's distant past, carrying within it the potential to either confirm that life once thrived on a world beyond Earth, or to teach us why it never did. As Perseverance's robotic arm drilled deeper into the Chajava Falls mudstone, the excitement among mission scientists grew exponentially. It wasn't just the layered structure of the rock or its finely compacted grains that told a story of ancient, tranquil Martian waters. It was what the rover's instruments detected hidden inside. Among the most striking discoveries were traces of unusual minerals, ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide. To most people, these may sound like ordinary geologic substances, but to geobiologists and astrobiologists, they are red flags, potential biosignatures, whispers from a world that may once have been alive. On Earth, both of these minerals are intimately tied to life. They often form through the actions of microbes that process iron and sulfur as part of their metabolism. That alone doesn't prove anything on Mars, but it adds a tantalizing piece to the puzzle. Why would such minerals appear in this specific environment, preserved inside an ancient lakebed where conditions once favored life? To unpack the significance of this, we need to understand the chemistry behind them. Ferrous iron phosphate is unusual even by Earth standards. It tends to occur where microbial communities are present, because certain bacteria exploit iron and phosphorus in their energy cycles, leaving behind mineral deposits as byproducts of life. Iron sulfide tells a similar story. Here on Earth, it often forms in the oxygen-free layers of lakes and seas, where microorganisms drive sulfur reduction reactions in the sediment. Finding these minerals together in the same sample on Mars is like stumbling upon a fingerprint pressed into stone, faint, incomplete, but suggestive of something alive that may have once left its mark. If these minerals formed strictly through abiotic processes, it would imply some rare geochemical pathway that scientists don't yet understand. But if they formed biologically, then Perseverance may have just uncovered direct evidence of past microbial life. What makes this even more compelling is the environment where the minerals were found. Chajava Falls mudstone formed under calm, standing water, not in some violent volcanic eruption or high-pressure geological upheaval. That means the setting was stable, relatively neutral in chemistry, and favorable for long-term microbial colonies to thrive. On Earth, similar quiet lakebed conditions have been prime spots for microbial mats to develop, leaving behind layered sediments full of chemical fingerprints. The iron and sulfur signals in the Martian mudstone fit perfectly with what we would expect if life had once been quietly thriving in Jezero's ancient lake, processing nutrients, cycling elements, and locking away minerals as silent evidence of their existence. To drive the point home, Perseverance isn't the first mission to detect odd mineral chemistry on Mars. Curiosity, operating in Gale Crater, previously found hints of sulfur compounds in ancient clays, raising the possibility that similar microbial processes could once have occurred there as well. But the ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide found at Jezero are unique because of their combination and context. They appear not just as random traces, but embedded in a finely preserved mudstone that dates back to one of the most habitable epochs in Mars's history. That narrows the possibilities dramatically. Either Mars had a strange, purely geological quirk that mimicked biology, or it really did host microbial life billions of years ago. Of course, caution remains the scientific mantra. Astrobiologists stress that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and no one is declaring life found on Mars just yet. There are abiotic pathways for these minerals to form. For example, chemical reactions between water, volcanic gases, and the planet's iron-rich crust could theoretically explain their presence. But the problem is that those reactions typically occur in dynamic, unstable environments, whereas the mudstone points to calm and steady conditions. The contradiction pushes scientists to dig deeper. Why would non-biological processes create minerals usually linked to biology in an environment so friendly to biology? It's the kind of paradox that keeps mission control buzzing late into the night. And this is where Perseverance's broader mission goals come into play. Its job isn't just to detect unusual minerals, but to collect samples for eventual return to Earth. The Chayava Falls core is now sealed in a titanium tube, stored in the rover's belly, waiting for the day when a joint NASA-ESA mission retrieves it. Only then, in the labs of Earth, can scientists apply the full arsenal of techniques: isotopic analysis, advanced microscopy, organic molecule detection, to determine whether these minerals truly carry the imprint of Martian microbes. That return mission, currently in development, could become the single most important scientific endeavour of the 21st century, because within that tiny rock core may lie the answer to one of humanity's oldest questions. Even now, though, the discovery has seismic implications. If ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide turn out to be biological in origin, it means life on Mars didn't just exist hypothetically, it actually happened. Microbes swam in Martian lakes, processed nutrients, and left behind mineral traces just as they did on Earth. That would prove that life isn't some rare accident unique to our planet, but a natural outcome when conditions are right. It would suggest that the universe itself is primed for life, and that microbes, perhaps even civilizations, may be thriving unseen across countless worlds. But even if the minerals are eventually shown to be abiotic, the discovery still forces us to rethink Martian geology in ways we never expected. It would mean Mars had hidden geochemical processes that mimic biology, reminding us of how easy it is to misinterpret signals when we look for life elsewhere. Either way, Jezero Crater has now become a cosmic classroom, teaching us about the fine line between chemistry and biology, and how fragile the clues to life can be when preserved for billions of years. When Perseverance's instruments turned their focus from minerals to carbon chemistry, the discoveries became even more electrifying. Inside the Chayava Falls mudstone, alongside the iron phosphate and iron sulfide signatures, the rover detected the presence of organic carbon compounds. These aren't just incidental molecules, they are the very building blocks of life as we know it. On Earth, organics form the foundation of biology, composing everything from amino acids to cell walls, from DNA to proteins. To find them preserved in Martian rock, in a setting that was once a calm, watery environment, is to stumble upon a chapter in Mars history that seems written with life in mind. The importance of this discovery cannot be overstated. Organic molecules don't automatically mean life. They can form through abiotic processes like chemical reactions in the atmosphere, or even be delivered by meteorites. But their presence in the very rocks where conditions were once most habitable dramatically raises the stakes. Imagine walking into a room where you first spot a matchbook on the floor. That could mean anything. But then you notice a faint smell of smoke, a blackened patch on the wall, and a discarded lighter nearby. Individually, each clue could have explanations unrelated to fire, but together they paint a compelling picture. That's what's happening at Jezero Crater. The organics by themselves aren't proof of life, but when paired with water-formed mudstone, with minerals often tied to biology, and with a lakebed environment stable for billions of years, they become part of a larger, interconnected story. What makes this especially striking is that the organic compounds were not just random traces, they were concentrated in specific layers of the mudstone, hinting at processes of deposition and preservation. On Earth, organics often become trapped in fine-grained sediments under calm water, shielded from harsh radiation and chemical breakdown. The mudstone at Chayava Falls seems to have provided exactly that protective environment, allowing these delicate molecules to endure for more than 3 billion years. That endurance alone is astonishing. Mars today is a hostile place with thin atmosphere, freezing temperatures, and relentless cosmic radiation that should shred organic compounds over geological timescales. The fact that they remain detectable suggests they were locked away quickly and deeply enough to resist destruction. Again, the kind of conditions life itself often exploits. The organics themselves appear to contain aromatic structures, ring-like arrangements of carbon atoms that are complex and chemically resilient. These are common in biological material, but they can also form through abiotic processes. Still, their detection on Mars is consistent with previous hints of carbon chemistry found by Curiosity rover in Gale crater, strengthening the case that organic material is widespread on the red planet. The difference here in Jezero crater is context. Curiosity's organics were found in sediments that were habitable, but Perseverance's discoveries are tied directly to an ancient lakebed, a setting far more conducive to long-lasting microbial life. Context is everything, and in this case, it makes the organics far harder to dismiss as coincidence. To scientists, this combination of organics and minerals is one of the strongest potential biosignatures ever detected beyond Earth. On our own planet, life thrives in environments where iron and sulfur cycling are linked with organic chemistry. Microbes in Earth's lakes and deep-sea hydrothermal vents, for example, use iron and sulfur reactions to fuel themselves while producing and consuming organic compounds in the process. Finding a similar pairing on Mars is like hearing a familiar melody played on a distant instrument, not identical, but hauntingly close. Yet again, caution dominates the conversation. Scientists emphasize that these organics could still come from non-biological sources, maybe ancient volcanic gases interacted with water and rock to synthesize them, or perhaps they were delivered by carbon-rich meteorites billions of years ago. But even these explanations don't fully account for why the organics appear in the precise place where conditions most resembled those of habitable lakes on Earth. If life never existed on Mars, then nature somehow staged a perfect laboratory that mimics the signs of biology without ever crossing that line. And if life did exist, then what Perseverance has found may be its chemical echo, preserved like a fossil written not in bones but in molecules. This is why sample return is so vital. The rover's instruments, while powerful, are limited by the constraints of operating on another planet. To truly determine whether these organics are biotic or abiotic, scientists need to bring the cores back to Earth. Sophisticated labs could search for molecular structures more complex than simple organics, such as amino acid chains or lipids, that are difficult to explain without biology. They could also measure isotopic ratios of carbon, since life tends to prefer lighter isotopes over heavier ones. Such a measurement could provide a near-definitive answer to the question, are these molecules the byproduct of geology or the fingerprints of Martian microbes? No matter which way the evidence ultimately leans, the detection of organic compounds marks a watershed moment. If they prove to be biological, we may be standing at the threshold of the greatest discovery in human history, confirmation that life evolved independently on two neighboring worlds. If they are not, the find is still monumental, because it shows that Mars was a planet where prebiotic chemistry the chemistry of life's potential was abundant. That means Mars may have been poised for life even if it never quite made the leap, and that the processes that seeded life on Earth may not have been unique after all. Among the most curious details uncovered in the Chayava Falls mudstone are the tiny nodules and peculiar patterns known as reaction fronts. At first glance, these features might seem like nothing more than irregular textures within the rock, small bumps and subtle boundaries formed as minerals rearranged themselves. But when scientists looked closer, the parallels with microbial activity on Earth became difficult to ignore. Nodules are rounded, often clustered features, and on our planet, such structures frequently form when microbial colonies interact with sediments, altering their chemistry and leaving behind distinct shapes that endure long after the microbes themselves are gone. To find similar textures on Mars is like stumbling upon an ancient, fossilized fingerprint. Subtle, ambiguous, but suggestive of something once alive. Perseverance's cameras and instruments captured these nodules embedded within the mudstone layers, scattered across surfaces in a way that seemed almost purposeful. Some nodules were enriched with iron and sulfur minerals, the very same chemical systems that microbes on Earth exploit for energy. On our planet, bacteria can create such mineral buildups as they metabolize iron or sulfur, essentially leaving behind microscopic monuments to their existence. The presence of nodules intertwined with reaction fronts, sharp boundaries where chemical changes in the rock occurred, adds another layer of intrigue. Reaction fronts are zones where different fluids once interacted, altering the chemistry of the rock along narrow pathways. On Earth, these fronts are sometimes shaped by microbial communities that thrive in the gradients between one chemical environment and another. It's in these transitional spaces that life often finds its niche, exploiting the energy difference to survive. The nodules in Chayava Falls are not uniformly distributed. Rather, they appear clustered in specific zones, almost as if responding to subtle environmental cues. On Earth, microbial colonies often spread in such patchy ways, forming mats or clusters where nutrients or energy sources are most abundant. Could these Martian nodules be the mineralized remains of similar colonies, long since fossilized in stone? That's the question scientists are daring to ask, even as they tread carefully around the possibility of over-interpretation. After all, nodules can also form through purely chemical processes, without any life involved, as minerals precipitate out of water and grow in rounded shapes over time. The danger lies in confusing an abiotic artifact with a biosignature, but the uncanny resemblance keeps the debate alive. What makes these nodules particularly compelling is their association with reaction fronts. These fronts indicate that fluids moved through the rock after it formed, creating zones where chemistry shifted dramatically. Such environments are prime real estate for microbes on Earth, offering gradients of energy and resources. For example, at the interface between oxidized and reduced minerals, bacteria often flourish, feeding on the chemical imbalance. If Mars ever hosted similar microbes, reaction fronts would have been a perfect habitat. The nodules forming alongside these fronts could therefore represent the mineral traces of microbial communities that once exploited these microenvironments. Adding to the intrigue, Perseverance detected differences in the chemistry between the nodule-bearing zones and the surrounding rock. Variations in iron and sulfur concentrations, coupled with subtle changes in texture, point toward processes that may not be entirely geological. While natural chemical precipitation could explain these features, the complexity and distribution of the nodules keep the biological interpretation firmly on the table. It's the kind of evidence that doesn't prove life existed, but stubbornly resists dismissal. On Earth, we often rely on biosignature textures, rock features shaped by life, as indicators of ancient biology in the fossil record. Stromatolites, for instance, are layered structures built by microbial mats in shallow waters, and they remain some of the oldest evidence for life on our planet. While the Martian nodules are not stromatolites, the principle is similar. Life leaves behind patterns, structures, and textures that geology alone struggles to reproduce convincingly. The nodules in Jezero crater may represent such biosignature textures, tantalizing hints that microbes once lived and died in those ancient Martian waters. Of course, caution reigns supreme. NASA and planetary scientists emphasize that abiotic explanations remain fully plausible. Minerals can precipitate into nodules as groundwater seeps through rock, and reaction fronts can form purely from chemical interactions without any biology. The challenge is distinguishing between processes that mimic life and those that are actually caused by it. That's why these samples are being carefully cached for eventual return to Earth, where laboratories can analyze the textures down to the nanometer scale, searching for cellular structures, chemical residues, or isotopic ratios that would betray a biological origin. For now, the nodules and reaction fronts serve as one of the most compelling visual and chemical mysteries Perseverance has uncovered. They force us to ask, if we saw these same features on Earth, would we hesitate to call them traces of life? If not, then why should Mars be any different? The possibility that these tiny nodules are fossilized echoes of ancient microbes is thrilling, not because it confirms life, but because it narrows the gap between speculation and reality. Mars is whispering to us through its rocks, hinting that something remarkable might once have happened on its surface, preserved in patterns so small yet so profound that they could redefine humanity's understanding of the cosmos. When we think of life, our minds often jump to complex organisms, plants, animals, and perhaps even intelligent beings. But if Mars ever hosted life, it almost certainly wasn't anything so advanced. The most realistic and scientifically supported scenario is that ancient Martian life would have been microbial, simple organisms not so different from the earliest life on Earth. Billions of years ago, when Jezero crater was a sprawling lake with rivers flowing into it, conditions may have been stable enough for microbes to take hold. These wouldn't have been creatures we could see with the naked eye. They would have existed at the microscopic level, invisible to us, but profoundly important in the grand story of biology. The discovery of organic compounds, iron and sulfur-related minerals, and nodule-like textures in Martian mudstone paints a picture of an environment that would have been perfect for such life to survive. On Earth, life began as microbes around 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, roughly the same time period when Mars was still wet, warmer, and geologically active. Early terrestrial microbes thrived in lakes, rivers, oceans, and even hydrothermal systems, often using iron, sulfur, and other simple chemical gradients as sources of energy. Mars, during its habitable era, offered strikingly similar conditions. Jezero's calm waters, rich in sediments and nutrients delivered by rivers, could have been a cradle for microbial colonies. These microbes might have lived in the shallow sediments, metabolizing minerals as food sources, forming thin microbial mats, or clustering around chemical reaction fronts within the rocks. If they existed, they may have altered their environment in subtle but detectable ways, leaving behind organics, mineral signatures, and textural imprints that we are only now beginning to uncover. One reason the microbial hypothesis is so compelling is that it fits naturally into what we know about life's resilience. On Earth, microbes thrive in places once thought impossible: acidic lakes, boiling hot springs, Antarctic ice, and deep beneath the ocean floor where sunlight never reaches. If life is able to exploit every conceivable niche here, it's not a stretch to think it could have done so on Mars when conditions were far more favorable. The nodules and organic molecules Perseverance has detected may therefore be fossilized traces of such hardy organisms, preserved for billions of years under protective sediments. The timeline also aligns beautifully. Around 3.5 billion years ago, Earth was exploding with microbial activity, with cyanobacteria and other simple organisms transforming the planet's chemistry. Mars, at the same time, still had surface water and an atmosphere thick enough to shield against radiation. If life arose independently on both planets during this overlapping window, it would suggest that biology is not an improbable fluke, but a natural outcome of planetary chemistry. Even if Martian microbes never evolved beyond their simplest forms, the mere fact that they might have existed would be revolutionary. It would prove that life is not unique to Earth, that wherever the right conditions persist, biology has a chance to emerge. Scientists believe that if Martian microbes existed, they may not have survived much beyond that ancient window. As Mars lost its atmosphere, dried out, and froze, its surface became increasingly hostile. The water evaporated, the protective magnetic field collapsed, and radiation bombarded the ground. Any microbes that hadn't retreated underground would likely have perished. Still, fossilized remains or preserved chemical traces could have endured in sediments like those in Jezero crater. That's why the mudstone drilled at Chayava Falls is so crucial. It represents one of the best chances to find those ancient whispers of life, captured in rock like time capsules waiting to be opened. The microbial hypothesis also ties together the multiple lines of evidence Perseverance has uncovered. Organics alone don't prove life, but microbes would have produced them as byproducts. Minerals like iron sulfide and iron phosphate could have formed through microbial metabolism, just as they do on Earth. Nodules and reaction fronts may record the places where microbial colonies altered their environment. Taken together, these clues sketch a plausible picture. Billions of years ago, Jezero crater may have hosted shallow waters where microbial mats flourished, metabolizing minerals and leaving behind traces that still linger today. It's important to remember, though, that microbes are humble yet profound. Their discovery on Mars wouldn't mean Martians with advanced civilizations, but it would mean we're no longer alone in the cosmic sense. Life would no longer be an Earth-only phenomenon. It would be a universal principle, capable of arising in multiple worlds given the right circumstances. If microbes lived on Mars, then life elsewhere in the galaxy suddenly becomes not just possible, but probable. Every habitable environment, from Europa's hidden oceans to Enceladus's plumes to distant exoplanets, would feel like a potential home for biology. This is why Perseverance's discoveries are so monumental. They push us closer to answering the age-old question, are we alone? If the rocks in Jezero crater hold the preserved biosignatures of Martian microbes, then that question may finally have an answer. And even though those microbes may have been tiny, their implications for humanity are enormous. A single-celled fossil on Mars would carry more weight than all of Earth's grandest monuments, because it would prove that life is not a miracle confined to our world, but a thread woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself. As electrifying as the evidence for possible ancient microbes may sound, science demands restraint. For every tantalizing clue pointing toward biology on Mars, there exists a set of explanations rooted purely in chemistry and geology. These abiotic explanations don't require life at all, only the natural interactions between rock, water, and atmosphere over billions of years. It is this careful balance between excitement and skepticism that defines NASA's approach, because declaring life on another planet requires not just extraordinary evidence, but irrefutable proof. Until then, the safe assumption must be that these intriguing signals could just as easily have been forged by non-biological means. Take the minerals discovered in the Chayava Falls mudstone, for example: ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide. On Earth, these can be linked to microbial metabolism, but they also form in environments where water interacts with rock in the complete absence of life. Iron, phosphorus, and sulfur are all abundant on Mars, and when groundwater flowed through sediments billions of years ago, it could have facilitated purely chemical precipitation. Under certain conditions, these minerals might simply crystallize out of solution, forming nodules or chemical fronts without any biological intervention. Mars, with its long history of volcanic activity and fluctuating water chemistry, provided plenty of opportunities for such processes to occur naturally. The organic molecules too, while exciting, do not automatically scream life. Organic carbon compounds are, at their simplest, just molecules built from carbon, hydrogen, and sometimes oxygen, nitrogen, or sulfur. They are the raw material of life, but they are not life itself. In fact, organics can form through multiple non-biological pathways. For instance, meteorites bombarding Mars have been shown to carry a variety of organic molecules delivered from space and deposited into Martian soils and rocks. Mars has been pummeled by countless asteroids and comets, many of them carbon-rich, so it's entirely plausible that the organics Perseverance found were extraterrestrial in origin, but not biological. There are also atmospheric pathways. Ultraviolet radiation from the Sun can trigger chemical reactions in Mars' thin atmosphere, producing simple organics that eventually settle onto the surface. These molecules could then become incorporated into sediments over time, preserved in the same mudstone that Perseverance is now drilling. On Earth, organics in rocks might strongly suggest biology, but on Mars, a planet lacking plate tectonics, rich in volcanism, and exposed to cosmic and solar radiation, the non-biological sources of organic molecules are far more varied. The nodules and reaction fronts, too, may not require microbes. While they resemble patterns shaped by microbial colonies on Earth, nodules can emerge when minerals slowly crystallize as groundwater moves through rock. Over time, chemical gradients create boundaries, the so-called reaction fronts, as fluids alter the mineral makeup of sediments. These fronts might appear structured or layered, but they can arise entirely from chemistry. Imagine iron-rich water seeping into a rock. As the water spreads, iron minerals may precipitate, creating a sharp divide between altered and unaltered zones. This process leaves behind nodules and patterns eerily similar to biological textures, yet fully abiotic. Even the very conditions Perseverance is exploring, ancient lakebeds and river deltas, are not immune to this ambiguity. While such environments are ideal for preserving life, they are also prime sites for preserving abiotic chemistry. Sediments deposited in calm water can trap both microbial fossils and lifeless organic debris alike. Without closer scrutiny, it's nearly impossible to tell them apart. That's why NASA insists that the samples must come back to Earth. Instruments on Perseverance, while advanced, cannot yet provide the level of precision needed to discriminate between life-derived and non-life-derived organics. Skeptics within the scientific community remind us of past lessons. Decades ago, the Viking landers in the 1970s conducted experiments on Martian soil that initially seemed to show signs of metabolism, a potential hint of life. But later studies suggested that reactive chemicals in the soil, like perchlorate, could have produced similar results without any biology. That controversy still lingers, and it serves as a cautionary tale. Mars has a way of tricking us into seeing life where there may be none. This does not mean the discoveries at Jezero are any less profound. On the contrary, the fact that Mars can produce organics, nodules, and minerals resembling biosignatures without life is itself fascinating. It means the planet has been a chemical laboratory for billions of years. experimenting with the same building blocks that set the stage for life on Earth. If these features are abiotic, they reveal just how close Mars came to creating the conditions for biology, close enough to blur the line between chemistry and life. The cautious approach also preserves the integrity of the scientific process. If NASA were to leap to conclusions and declare life based on ambiguous data, only to have it disproven later, it would erode public trust. That's why every claim is weighed against the strongest possible non-biological explanations. In science, ruling out all other possibilities is as important as finding evidence itself. Only when the abiotic alternatives are exhausted will scientists confidently say, yes, this is life. And so, the debate continues. The minerals could be biological or not. The organics might be Martian, meteoritic, or atmospheric. The nodules could be fossils or chemical curiosities. The uncertainty is maddening, but it is also the beauty of discovery, because whether the answer turns out to be life or not, the journey to uncover it deepens our understanding of both Mars and the universe. When scientists talk about evidence of life, they use the word biosignature. This term doesn't mean they've directly spotted a fossilized cell or some undeniable proof of biology. Instead, it refers to patterns, textures, or chemical traces that strongly suggest biological activity. On Earth, biosignatures can be found in things like stromatolites, which are layered rock structures created by microbial mats billions of years ago, or in the specific ratios of isotopes left behind in sediments by living organisms. The challenge with Mars is that we're looking at an alien environment where many of the same processes that might be driven by microbes on Earth can also happen through non-biological chemistry. A mineral might look like it formed in the presence of microbes, but it could just as easily have crystallized from chemical reactions in water and rock. That is why NASA and the scientific community are extremely cautious. Declaring life beyond Earth would be one of the most profound discoveries in human history, and it cannot be based on ambiguous data. Every observation has to be tested against non-biological explanations. For example, the organic carbon found in the Martian mudstone is intriguing, but organics can form from purely geological processes, or even be delivered by meteorites. The iron minerals that resemble microbial activity on Earth are compelling, but Mars's chemistry is unusual and could produce similar results without life. The nodules and reaction fronts in the rock might look like biosignature textures, but shapes alone are not enough. This careful approach is not about holding back excitement. It's about ensuring scientific rigor. Humanity remembers past moments when claims of extraterrestrial life stirred headlines but later collapsed under scrutiny. In 1996, a meteorite from Mars found in Antarctica made global news because of structures that looked like microfossils. For a time, it was hailed as proof of Martian life. Yet later studies showed those shapes could be produced by inorganic processes, and the debate continues to this day. That cautionary tale lingers in the minds of NASA scientists. They know the burden of proof for declaring life beyond Earth is enormous, and rightfully so. A single mistake could damage credibility for decades. So the mission now is not just about noticing intriguing features. It's about collecting evidence in layers, building a case step by step. That's why Perseverance's drilling samples are being cached for a future Mars sample return mission. On Earth, labs with advanced tools can probe these rocks at atomic scales, testing isotope ratios, analyzing the precise molecular structures of organic compounds, and searching for patterns that can't be explained by chemistry alone. This is how a biosignature goes from a possibility to a confirmed sign of life, through multiple independent lines of evidence that converge on the same conclusion. The importance of biosignatures lies in this convergence. One mineral by itself might not mean much. Organic carbon alone might not mean much. Strange textures might not mean much. But when you find all three in the same rock, minerals that hint at life, organics that could feed life, and textures that resemble life's handiwork, you start to see a picture forming. And when that picture aligns with what we know about ancient habitable environments, like a calm Martian lakebed where water lingered for millions of years, the possibility becomes harder to dismiss. For the scientists working on Perseverance, every new finding is like adding another brushstroke to a cosmic canvas. They aren't ready to declare what the image shows just yet, but they know it's revealing something extraordinary about Mars's past. Whether that story turns out to be about geology alone or about life itself remains the great unanswered question. The word biosignature is the bridge between evidence and certainty, the line that must be crossed with overwhelming proof before humanity can say, without hesitation, that we are not alone. The discoveries made by Perseverance so far, minerals, organics, nodules, and textures, are tantalizing, but they are just the beginning of the story. To truly understand whether these features are the result of life or just the quirks of Martian chemistry, scientists need to study the rocks in laboratories here on Earth. That is why the Mars Sample Return mission has been called one of the most ambitious and important undertakings in the history of planetary exploration. Perseverance was designed with this mission in mind from the very beginning. Each time it drills into ancient rock, extracts a core, and seals it in a pristine titanium tube, it's not just gathering data for today, it's preparing a gift for the future, a set of time capsules from Mars that may carry the answers to the greatest question humanity has ever asked. Are we alone? The importance of bringing samples back to Earth cannot be overstated. While Perseverance carries an impressive suite of scientific instruments, there are limits to what a rover can do on another planet. Its spectrometers and cameras are powerful, but they cannot match the precision of Earth-based laboratories that house equipment weighing tons, requiring massive amounts of power, and operated by experts who can modify their experiments in real time. On Earth, scientists can slice samples into microscopic thin sections, probe them with electron microscopes that resolve details smaller than a virus, and use advanced isotope analysis to trace the chemical fingerprints of biological versus non-biological processes. The subtle distinctions between life and chemistry can often come down to differences so fine that only our most sophisticated instruments can detect them. The Mars Sample Return mission is designed as a multi-step relay across space. Perseverance's role is to collect and cache the samples in carefully chosen spots on the Martian surface. A future mission, involving a lander equipped with a small fetch rover, will retrieve those tubes and load them into a rocket, the Mars Ascent Vehicle, waiting on the lander's deck. That rocket will then blast off from Mars, carrying the sealed tubes into orbit around the red planet. There, a spacecraft launched from Earth will rendezvous, capture the container, and ferry it back across millions of kilometers of interplanetary space. Finally, after a careful entry into Earth's atmosphere, the samples will be recovered under sterile, secure conditions to prevent contamination both ways, protecting the Martian material from Earth microbes and Earth from any possible Martian biology. The engineering challenges of this plan are staggering. No rocket has ever launched from another planet before. No mission has ever attempted an interplanetary rendezvous of this complexity. The level of coordination between multiple spacecraft, designed and launched years apart, is unprecedented. Yet the payoff is so great that NASA and its international partners, especially the European Space Agency, are willing to invest billions of dollars and decades of effort. If the mission succeeds, humanity will, for the first time, hold in its hands samples that were not just gathered from the Moon or captured as dust from a comet, but carefully chosen from a site that was once an ancient lake on another world. The moment those samples arrive on Earth will mark a turning point in science. Teams of researchers around the globe will race to examine them, each bringing specialized tools and perspectives. Some will study the mineralogy, looking at the crystal structures of the iron-rich phases that Perseverance spotted. Others will focus on the organics, searching for complex carbon-based molecules and checking if they display patterns unique to biological processes, such as long chains or ring structures more common in living systems. Geochemists will analyze isotope ratios, comparing the proportions of lighter and heavier atoms of elements like carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur. On Earth, life tends to prefer lighter isotopes, a subtle bias that can reveal biological activity across billions of years. If the Martian samples show the same pattern, it would be a smoking gun. There's also the possibility of discovering microfossils. On Earth, the earliest life forms were not towering plants or animals, but microscopic microbes. These left behind faint imprints in sediments, tiny filaments, tubes, or layered mats that, under the right conditions, fossilized. In the Martian mudstone sample, Chayava Falls, conditions were calm enough that such textures could have been preserved if life was present. Under a scanning electron microscope, scientists could examine the surfaces of these rocks in exquisite detail, searching for structures that cannot be explained by geology alone. But beyond the scientific analysis lies the weight of history. If these samples confirm life once existed on Mars, it will not just be a scientific milestone, it will be a cultural and philosophical revolution. Every civilization throughout history has looked to the stars and wondered if we were unique. A confirmed biosignature in these rocks would mean we are not alone, not even in our own solar system. It would suggest that life may be common, that the universe is teeming with biology waiting to be discovered. It would raise questions about what kind of life forms might evolve elsewhere, what their fates might be, and what role humanity has in this broader cosmic story. Even if the samples show no definitive signs of biology, their value is immeasurable. Understanding how Mars evolved from a wet, potentially habitable world into the cold, arid desert we see today will shed light on the fragility of planetary environments. By comparing Mars to Earth, scientists can refine their understanding of how planets maintain or lose habitability, lessons that will be critical as humanity faces challenges with our own changing climate. The Mars sample return will also refine the techniques we'll use to explore other worlds, like Europa or Enceladus, where subsurface oceans might harbour life today. The discoveries that have captivated the world from Jezero crater did not appear out of thin air. They were the result of a symphony of engineering and science woven together into the very body of the Perseverance rover. This six-wheeled laboratory was designed not just to traverse Martian landscapes, but to peer into the very fabric of rocks, dust, and sediments that hold the history of Mars. Every sensor, every camera, every instrument aboard was carefully chosen to work in harmony with the others, creating a toolset capable of detecting the faintest whispers of ancient biology. At the heart of this mission is the philosophy that you don't send one instrument to hunt for life. You send a team of instruments that can cross-verify one another, ensuring that any claim is built on a mountain of evidence. One of the most celebrated instruments aboard Perseverance is SHERLOC, short for Scanning Habitable Environments with Raman and Luminescence for Organics and Chemicals. It sits on the rover's robotic arm and carries the task of searching for organic molecules, the building blocks of life. Using a technique called Raman spectroscopy, SHERLOC shines ultraviolet light on Martian rocks and then measures the unique way that light scatters back. Each type of molecule scatters light in a distinct pattern, almost like a fingerprint. When Sherlock finds carbon-rich molecules embedded in minerals, scientists take notice. On Earth, many of these organics are linked to life, though they can also form through non-biological processes. What makes Sherlock extraordinary is its ability to not only detect these compounds, but to map them across rock surfaces at microscopic scales. Imagine looking at a rock not as a solid whole, but as a mosaic of tiny features, each telling a part of a billion-year-old story. That's what Sherlock delivers, pixel by pixel, laser by laser. But Sherlock doesn't work alone. Mounted nearby is another instrument called PIXL, Planetary Instrument for X-ray Lithochemistry. If Sherlock is the detective searching for carbon-based molecules, then PIXL is the geochemist, analysing the mineral environment where those organics live. PIXL fires a beam of X-rays onto Martian rocks and reads the fluorescent glow that comes back. That glow carries precise information about the chemical elements present: iron, phosphorus, sulfur, magnesium, and more. With a resolution fine enough to detect features thinner than a human hair, PIXL allows scientists to build chemical maps of rock surfaces. These maps can reveal tiny patterns, zones where phosphorus clusters or where iron and sulfur combine, that on Earth are often tied to microbial activity. When Sherlock and Pixel overlap their findings, scientists can ask, do the organics line up with mineral reactions that biology favors? Are there hotspots where the chemistry looks less like random geology and more like purposeful microbial influence? Then there's the unsung hero of the mission, the coring drill. Unlike Curiosity, which could only pulverize rock into powder, Perseverance can drill cylindrical cores of intact rock, preserving the delicate textures and layering that tell geologic time. These samples, no thicker than a pencil, are sealed in titanium tubes, ensuring they remain uncontaminated for future study on Earth. But the brilliance of the drill is not just its ability to cut, it's the decision-making process behind where and when it drills. Perseverance's cameras and spectrometers scout the landscape first, identifying targets worth the effort. Then, after Sherlock and Pixel perform close-up inspections, the drill takes over, securing a piece of Mars that could hold biosignatures older than any fossil on Earth. Every drilled sample is essentially a chapter torn out of Mars's history book, waiting for human scientists to read it in laboratories back home. Alongside these instruments, Perseverance carries a wide range of other tools that add depth to the hunt for life. SuperCam, perched atop the rover's mast, can shoot a laser from several meters away, vaporizing a pinpoint of rock and analyzing the plasma that results. This gives scientists a quick look at rock chemistry before deciding whether to get up close. Mastcam Z, the rover's primary camera system, provides high-resolution, zoomable images that not only map the terrain, but also help spot subtle geological features, layering, crossbedding, or erosion patterns that hint at ancient water environments. Together, these tools provide the context needed to decide whether a rock is worth deploying. Sherlock, Pixel, and the drill. The instruments are not just complementary, they are interdependent. A discovery by one often gains meaning only when supported by the others. Sherlock may spot organics, but without PIXL confirming the surrounding minerals, the finding might remain ambiguous. PIXL may highlight chemical anomalies, but Sherlock is needed to check whether organics are tied to them. The coring drill then locks those discoveries into history, preserving them for future generations to analyze with tools we haven't even invented yet. This layered approach is why the Bright Angel Formation, the Chayava Falls sample, and the strange nodules have drawn so much excitement, because every instrument, in its own way, confirmed that something unusual is happening there. Even beyond the science, the engineering elegance of these tools represents decades of innovation. Building instruments that can survive the brutal cold, dust storms, and radiation of Mars all while performing delicate scientific tasks, is no small feat. Every wire, every lens, every motor had to be designed with redundancy and precision. Instruments like Sherlock even carry calibration targets made of known materials, so scientists can check their accuracy across years of operation. And in one poetic flourish, Sherlock even carries materials for testing the endurance of spacesuit fabrics, foreshadowing the day when humans will walk where the rover now rolls. For decades, Mars has teased us with clues, offering just enough to spark hope, but never quite enough to deliver certainty. Every rover and orbiter has added pieces to the puzzle, and yet the image has always remained incomplete. Methane plumes rising mysteriously from the surface, ancient river valleys carved into the crust, salts that suggested briny water might still flow in the present day. All these findings whispered of habitability, but none shouted of life. Perseverance's recent discoveries, however, stand out because, for the first time, they weave together multiple independent lines of evidence in one place, at one time, in a context that geologists and astrobiologists recognize as uniquely favorable for biology. It's this convergence of data, minerals, organics, textures, and environment that makes the Bright Angel Formation and the Chiava Falls sample so electrifying compared to anything we've seen before. Consider methane, one of the most famous Martian enigmas. In 2004, ESA's Mars Express orbiter detected plumes of methane gas in the atmosphere. On Earth, most methane is produced by microbes, though it can also be generated geologically through processes like serpentinization, when water interacts with certain minerals deep underground. Later, NASA's Curiosity rover also detected methane spikes near Gale Crater, with levels rising seasonally. These findings sparked headlines and speculation, but the problem was context. Methane gas in the atmosphere is fleeting. It can be destroyed by ultraviolet radiation within decades. Without knowing exactly where it was coming from, and without finding solid rocks that tied methane to ancient environments, scientists were left debating endlessly whether it was a sign of biology or just geology at work. Then there were the earlier hints of organics. In 2014, Curiosity's SAM, Sample Analysis at Mars instrument, announced the detection of simple organic molecules in 3-billion-year-old mudstones at Gale Crater. This was a breakthrough, carbon-based compounds on Mars, but they were relatively small, simple molecules, the kind that could form abiotically through chemical reactions. Later studies showed chlorine-bearing organics as well, but again, without a mineralogical or textural context, the discoveries remained ambiguous. The organics were there, yes, but scientists could not say whether they had biological origins or were simply chemistry preserved in rock. What makes Perseverance's findings different is the synergy. At Jezero Crater's Bright Angel Formation, the rover drilled into mudstones that were deposited under calm water conditions in an ancient river system. This alone is significant. Lakes and deltas on Earth are known as prime environments for life to thrive and for biosignatures to be preserved. Within this environment, Perseverance detected complex organic molecules, not just simple ones, and these were directly associated with unusual minerals like ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide. On Earth, those minerals are frequently linked to microbial processes, especially in sedimentary settings where microbes interact with iron and sulfur in ways geology alone rarely mimics. Add to this the strange nodules and reaction fronts that visually resemble microbial textures in terrestrial rocks, and suddenly the puzzle pieces don't just exist, they start fitting together. The comparison is striking. Methane detections hinted at something ephemeral, hard to pin down. Curiosity's organics gave us molecules, but no context. Perseverance, however, is delivering context-rich evidence, a habitable environment, biologically suggestive minerals, preserved organics, and textural clues, all in one sample, drilled and sealed for further study. For scientists trained to be cautious, this is the strongest candidate yet for signs of past life. Not because any one line of evidence is conclusive, but because all the lines converge in a way that mirrors the complexity of biological systems. It's also worth noting how carefully scientists are handling this discovery compared to the past. In 1996, a team studying the Martian meteorite, ALH 84001, claimed to have found microfossil-like shapes and chemical signatures suggestive of life. The announcement ignited headlines and even prompted a speech from the US president. But in time, skepticism grew. Alternative explanations emerged. Non-biological chemistry could have produced the same features. The scientific community learned a critical lesson. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and one piece of data in isolation is never enough. With perseverance, that lesson is clearly guiding the approach. Instead of rushing to proclaim life, NASA emphasizes that these are the strongest clues yet, but confirmation awaits laboratory analysis on Earth. This deliberate caution is precisely why the discovery stands out as credible and historic. Another reason this moment feels so different is the sheer sophistication of the technology now at work. Earlier missions were limited by their instruments. Curiosity could detect organics, but not with the microscopic precision of SHERLOC. It could drill rocks, but only pulverize them, losing delicate textures. Perseverance can do both, scanning organics at micrometer scales, correlating them with mineral chemistry through PIXL, and capturing intact cores that preserve fine structures. The scientific fidelity of these discoveries is on an entirely new level. We're not just seeing hints, we're seeing detailed, layered evidence in the very rocks themselves. Perhaps most importantly, the findings stand out because they are not isolated curiosities. They are embedded in a broader narrative of Mars as a once habitable world. The Jezero crater lakebed, the flowing rivers that fed it, the calm waters that deposited mudstones, all of these line up with what we know about where life thrives on Earth. We are no longer chasing random signals in the atmosphere or puzzling over ambiguous meteorites. We are directly investigating one of the most promising habitats Mars ever offered, with the best tools humanity has ever sent beyond Earth. For the first time, the question feels less like a dream and more like a testable hypothesis. Did microbes once live in Jezero's waters? The evidence so far, the organics, the minerals, the textures, the environment, suggests that if Mars ever hosted life, this is exactly where we would find its traces. And with every drilled core sealed for eventual return, Perseverance is ensuring that this isn't just a fleeting discovery, but the foundation of what could become the most important scientific revelation of our time. The announcement of Perseverance's discoveries at the Bright Angel Formation sent ripples not only through the public imagination, but deep into the scientific community itself. And, as has always been the case with Mars, the revelations ignited debate, passionate, sharp, and necessary. Because while the evidence of organics, minerals, and textures preserved in Jezero's ancient mudstones is the most compelling case yet for possible life, science thrives not on excitement alone, but on skepticism, careful evaluation, and debate. To many, the findings look like the closest humanity has ever come to proving that life once existed on another planet. To others, they remain tantalizing but inconclusive, another example of Mars dangling the possibility of biology without ever letting us pin it down. On one side of the debate are those who see these discoveries as profound. Scientists specializing in geobiology, the study of how life interacts with rocks and minerals, have pointed out that the combination of ferrous iron phosphate, iron sulfide, and organics strongly mirrors microbial processes on Earth. In hydrothermal vents, for example, microbes thrive by harnessing chemical reactions involving iron and sulfur, leaving behind mineral deposits that resemble what Perseverance has uncovered. To these researchers, the textures within the Chayava Falls sample, the nodules, the subtle layering, look strikingly familiar. It's not proof, but it's the kind of evidence that, if found on Earth, would strongly suggest biological activity. For them, this isn't just geology, it's the faint echo of Martian life captured in stone. On the other side are the cautious voices, equally experienced, who remind us that Mars is not Earth. The red planet is a world shaped by processes alien to our own experience, with chemistry and geology that can sometimes mimic biology without requiring it. They note that ferrous iron phosphate and iron sulfide can form abiotically under certain conditions, especially in a world that once had abundant volcanic activity and chemical-rich waters. Organics, too, are not synonymous with life. They can emerge from chemical pathways that never involved biology at all. Even the nodules that look so enticing could be nothing more than mineral concretions, akin to those that form naturally in sedimentary rocks here on Earth, without a single microbe being involved. To these scientists, rushing to interpret the data through a biological lens risks repeating past mistakes, like the overinterpretation of the Martian meteorite ALH84001 in the 1990s. The debate is not just a clash of optimism and skepticism, it's a clash of methodologies. Astrobiology as a field demands extraordinary rigor because its stakes are so high. Declaring life on Mars without overwhelming evidence would not only undermine public trust in science, but also set back the search for extraterrestrial life by decades. Thus, many researchers insist that no matter how suggestive Perseverance's discoveries may be, confirmation must wait until the samples are returned to Earth, where they can be analysed with the full arsenal of human technology, electron microscopes, isotope ratio mass spectrometers, and tools far beyond what any rover could carry. Only in those laboratories will it be possible to make a definitive case. Yet, there is another layer to this debate, an emotional and philosophical one. For some scientists, the evidence has reached a tipping point. They argue that the cautious stance, while scientifically responsible, risks dulling the impact of what could be one of the greatest discoveries in human history. If the evidence is this compelling, why not start preparing society for the possibility that we are not alone? Should science always wait until the last shred of doubt is gone? Or is it acceptable to say, this could be it? These questions extend beyond science into communication and ethics. Announcing that we may have found evidence of life on Mars is not a small thing. It shapes public perception, influences funding, and shifts humanity's self-image. NASA itself has adopted a careful middle ground. In press conferences and publications, the agency emphasizes that these findings are potential biosignatures rather than evidence of life. Officials highlight the importance of skepticism, repeating that more analysis is required. At the same time, they recognize the power of the discovery to inspire. The excitement is undeniable. Scientists, journalists, and everyday people alike are captivated by the thought that microbes once swam in Martian lakes. NASA knows that while caution is necessary, wonder is what fuels exploration. If these Martian samples, when returned to Earth and studied in the most advanced laboratories, ultimately confirm that they are biological in origin, the implications would be staggering. Arguably the most profound discovery in the history of science. Humanity would no longer be able to say that Earth is the sole cradle of life in the cosmos. The narrative of existence itself would change. Suddenly, we would know that life is not unique to this planet, but rather a natural outcome of the universe's chemistry under the right conditions. This single confirmation would mean that biology is not an Earth-exclusive accident, but a cosmic pattern, woven into the very fabric of planetary systems. The age-old question, "Are we alone?" would finally be answered, not in abstract theory, but in hard evidence drilled from an alien world. And that answer would echo across every field of human thought. Imagine what this revelation would mean for astrobiology. The entire discipline would be validated overnight. Researchers would no longer be theorizing about life beyond Earth in speculative terms. They would have proof in their hands. That proof would unlock new avenues of investigation. How did these Martian microbes evolve? What chemistry sustained them? Did they share a common origin with Earth life, perhaps seeded by meteorite exchange between the planets? Or did they arise completely independently, showing that life can spring forth more than once in the same solar system? The implications of either answer would be revolutionary. If life arose independently on Mars, then it suggests the universe is teeming with life because two neighboring planets managed it separately. If instead life on Earth and Mars share a connection, perhaps through panspermia, then it raises the stunning possibility that we ourselves may be descendants of life that began not on Earth but on Mars. Beyond science, the societal and cultural shock would be immense. Humanity has long viewed itself as special, as the center of life's story. Philosophies and worldviews would all have to grapple with the confirmation that life exists beyond our planet. For some, it would be a validation of the idea that the universe is abundant and purposeful. The discovery would inspire new philosophies that place Earth and humanity not at the center, but as part of a broader, interconnected cosmic community. The idea of being alone in the universe would collapse overnight, and with it, some of the existential fears that have haunted civilizations for centuries. At the same time, the discovery would fuel technological innovation. Just as the Apollo program accelerated advancements in computing, engineering, and materials science, the pursuit of Martian biology would likely revolutionize biotechnology, nanotechnology, and life detection methods. Instruments designed to probe Martian cells, for instance, could be adapted for medical diagnostics on Earth, while new techniques for analyzing extraterrestrial organics might unlock insights into the earliest stages of life's origin here at home. The discovery of alien life would not only reshape our view of the cosmos, but also yield practical benefits that ripple across society. And then there is the psychological impact. For centuries, humanity has asked, "Why are we here?" That question has always been shadowed by the possibility that we are utterly alone, a fragile spark in a silent universe. The confirmation of life on Mars would bring a profound sense of belonging, that life is not a rare fluke, but part of a larger pattern. People might look up at the night sky differently, seeing not empty space, but potential worlds alive with their own stories. It would also ignite a sense of urgency to protect life on Earth, knowing now how precious and rare it is to encounter life, even in its simplest forms. But perhaps the most exciting implication is what it would mean for the search beyond Mars. If microbial life was found on Mars, it would strengthen the case for life elsewhere in the solar system, beneath the icy crusts of Europa or Enceladus, in the methane lakes of Titan, or even in the clouds of Venus. Each of those worlds would suddenly feel more alive, more worth exploring. And beyond our solar system, the discovery would amplify efforts to study exoplanets. Telescopes searching for biosignatures in alien atmospheres would no longer be chasing a dream, but building upon confirmed precedent. Mars would no longer be the exception, but the first data point in a much broader cosmic survey. If Perseverance's samples eventually confirm that microbes once lived on Mars, it would immediately shift our perspective on the likelihood of life throughout the cosmos. Right now, despite decades of searching, Earth remains the only world we know for certain to host biology. Many scientists believe life could be common, but it remains speculation. A confirmation on Mars would change speculation into evidence. It would mean that life arose not once, but twice, within the same solar system, under two very different planetary conditions. That simple fact would radically alter the odds. If life can emerge on two neighboring worlds orbiting a fairly ordinary star, then surely it can arise on countless other planets circling the hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way alone. Suddenly, the universe would appear not as a silent void, but as a fertile garden where life may be the rule, not the exception. The probability leap is enormous. Before such a discovery, the Drake equation, which attempts to estimate the number of intelligent civilizations in the galaxy, has one parameter that is completely unknown. How often does life actually begin? We know it happened here, but with only a single data point, the odds could range anywhere from vanishingly rare to virtually guaranteed. If Mars confirms a second genesis of life, that probability skyrockets. Even if Martian life were microbial and never advanced beyond simple forms, the fact that it arose independently would mean that abiogenesis, the process of life emerging from chemistry, is not a freak occurrence, but a natural progression given the right conditions. This would make it far harder to argue that Earth is unique. Consider the chain reaction this creates in astrobiology. Mars itself would go from being just one fascinating case to being the cornerstone of a new universal principle, that life is a cosmic phenomenon. The icy oceans of Europa, Enceladus, and Titan would suddenly become not just intriguing targets, but high-priority candidates where we could reasonably expect life to have developed as well. Every exoplanet discovered in a star's habitable zone would become more than just an object of study. They would become worlds of possibility, places where the odds of life existing are no longer slim, but statistically likely. The discovery on Mars would serve as proof of concept that where liquid water, energy sources, and key chemistry exist, life can find a way. It would also reshape how we view evolution and survival. If Mars once had microbes, then the timeline of life's emergence is critical. Did it appear quickly after conditions stabilized, just as life on Earth is thought to have emerged shortly after the oceans formed? If so, then that means life doesn't need billions of years of stability. It may spring forth rapidly whenever the environment allows. That would make it nearly inevitable that many planets and moons across the universe also produced life early in their histories, even if some of them later lost it due to environmental collapse. In other words, the cosmos may be filled with the fossils of lost biospheres, each telling its own story of beginnings, extinctions, and possible survivors. And beyond microbes, the question naturally arises: if simple life can appear so readily, could complex life follow as well? On Earth, it took billions of years for life to progress from single-celled organisms to multicellular creatures and eventually to intelligence. But the discovery of a second genesis, even if only microbial, would encourage scientists to believe that intelligent civilizations may not be as rare as once thought. Even if only a tiny fraction of life-bearing worlds evolve intelligence in a galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars, that fraction could still amount to millions of civilizations. The impact on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETY, would be profound. Instead of listening for signals with the quiet hope that maybe someone is out there, researchers would have strong reason to believe that intelligent life should exist somewhere. The silence of the universe, known as the Fermi paradox, would be reframed, not a question of whether life exists, but why, if it does, we haven't yet detected it. That paradox would take on new urgency, pushing scientists to expand their methods, build more powerful telescopes, and think more broadly about how alien civilizations might communicate or exist. This shift in probability would also transform how the public views the universe. For centuries, people have looked at the stars and wondered if they are alone. A Martian microbe would be enough to answer that question, not by showing us a thriving civilization, but by revealing that life is a universal property. That revelation would make every star system feel more alive, more mysterious, and more worth exploring. The discovery on Mars, while groundbreaking, is only one thread woven into a much larger and ongoing tapestry: humanity's search for life beyond Earth. For decades, scientists have treated Mars as the most accessible testing ground for astrobiology. But Mars is not the only candidate, and it is certainly not the most promising one when compared to some other celestial bodies. Instead, Mars functions as a stepping stone, an initial piece of evidence in a far greater cosmic puzzle. If Perseverance's findings hint at past microbes, then the search must expand to include worlds where conditions for life may still exist today, actively and vibrantly, not just as remnants of a bygone era. Take Europa, Jupiter's icy moon, which has captivated scientists for decades. Beneath its frozen crust lies a vast global ocean of liquid water, kept from freezing by the tidal forces exerted by Jupiter's immense gravity. Estimates suggest that Europa's ocean may contain more than twice the volume of all of Earth's oceans combined. Within this alien sea, shielded from radiation by kilometers of ice, conditions could mimic Earth's deep ocean hydrothermal vents, which teem with life despite the absence of sunlight. On Earth, such vents are home to entire ecosystems fueled not by photosynthesis, but by chemosynthesis, life drawing its energy from chemical reactions involving minerals and heat. If life exists in Europa's dark ocean, it may resemble these extremophiles, microbes, tube worms, or completely unknown organisms adapted to a sunless environment. Then there is Enceladus, Saturn's small but astonishing moon. In 2005, NASA's Cassini spacecraft discovered plumes of water vapor erupting from cracks near its south pole, spewing material directly into space. Subsequent analysis revealed that these plumes contained salts, organics, and even tiny grains of silica that hinted at hydrothermal activity on the seafloor beneath Enceladus's icy shell. In essence, Cassini gave scientists free samples of an extraterrestrial ocean, and those samples looked tantalizingly similar to the building blocks of life. Unlike Mars, where we are studying ancient remnants, Enceladus may be offering evidence of an oceanic environment where life could exist right now. Future missions to fly through or even capture these plumes could provide the clearest test yet for living organisms beyond Earth. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, presents an entirely different but equally fascinating possibility. Unlike Europa or Enceladus, Titan has an atmosphere thicker than Earth's and surface lakes, not of water, but of liquid methane and ethane. Temperatures there are unimaginably cold, but chemistry is active in ways we do not yet fully understand. While Titan might not host water-based life, it challenges our very definition of habitability. Could there be organisms built on methane instead of water, adapted to conditions completely alien to us? If Mars shows us that life can arise in familiar watery environments, Titan could show us that the universe may harbor life forms that are stranger and more diverse than anything we can imagine. Beyond our solar system, the search has expanded into the realm of exoplanets, worlds orbiting stars far from our Sun. With missions like Kepler, TESS, and the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers are identifying planets that lie in the so-called habitable zone where liquid water could exist. More than that, scientists are beginning to analyze exoplanet atmospheres, looking for chemical fingerprints known as biosignature gases. On Earth, oxygen and methane together are strong indicators of life because they do not coexist in large amounts without biological processes maintaining them. If such a combination were detected on a distant exoplanet, it would be a monumental discovery, possibly rivaling or even surpassing anything found on Mars. The beauty of exoplanets is that they provide us with a statistical picture. If even a fraction of the billions of planets in our galaxy show biosignatures, life becomes not just possible, but probable. Seen in this larger context, the Martian discovery serves as the first domino in a chain of revelations. If microbes once thrived in Jezero crater's calm waters, it validates the strategy of looking for life in environments that mirror Earth's history. But at the same time, it forces us to expand our horizons. It says, yes, life may have been here, but don't stop looking because it may also be out there right now. Mars teaches us that biology may leave behind clues in rocks and sediments, but Europa and Enceladus tempt us with environments where biology could be ongoing. Exoplanets, meanwhile, remind us that the conditions for life are not confined to our solar system at all, but are likely scattered across the galaxy in untold numbers. The larger search for life is therefore not about one discovery, but about assembling a mosaic. Mars provides ancient evidence. Europa and Enceladus may offer current examples. Titan stretches the definition of life itself, and exoplanets give us a cosmic survey of possibilities. Each world adds a unique piece to the puzzle, and together they tell us that the question of life is not if, but where, and how many times. In this sense, Perseverance's discovery is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a wider journey. Mars is speaking to us in whispers from the past, but the universe is filled with other voices waiting to be heard. The red planet may be our first confirmation, but it will not be the last. The discovery on Mars does more than just spark wonder. It reshapes the entire roadmap for the future of space exploration. For decades, Mars has been humanity's most tantalizing target, not just because it is our closest planetary neighbor, but because it carries echoes of Earth's early past. Perseverance's findings add fuel to that fire, giving space agencies around the world a clear incentive to double down on Mars exploration. No longer is it just about geology or climate history. It's about unraveling the mystery of life itself. That singular question, did Mars once host living organisms, is powerful enough to drive decades of missions, billions of dollars in investment, and perhaps one day, the decision to send human explorers to the red planet. In the immediate future, the most critical step is the Mars Sample Return Program, an unprecedented collaboration between NASA and the European Space Agency. Perseverance has already been caching samples in sealed tubes, carefully chosen from the most promising sites like Jezero Crater and Bright Angel Formation. The plan is to send a follow-up mission equipped with a lander, a small rocket, and potentially even a drone to retrieve those samples and launch them into Martian orbit, where they would then be captured by a spacecraft and ferried back to Earth. If successful, this would mark the first time material from another planet has ever been returned for study. On Earth, scientists could unleash the full arsenal of laboratory techniques far beyond the capabilities of any rover to examine those rocks down to the atomic scale. It is in those labs that the question of Martian life may finally be answered. But Mars Sample Return is just the beginning. The tantalizing evidence from Perseverance will almost certainly inspire the design of new robotic missions. Future rovers may be even more specialized, equipped with miniaturized biological laboratories capable of detecting specific molecular patterns unique to life. Others may be designed to drill deeper beneath the Martian surface, where potential microbial life might still be preserved in ice or shielded from harsh radiation. Orbiters with more powerful spectrometers could map the distribution of organics and minerals across the planet, helping scientists identify new hotspots worth investigating. Each mission will refine our understanding, narrowing the search until the picture of Mars's biological potential becomes impossible to ignore. The momentum doesn't stop at robotics. Perseverance's discoveries breathe new urgency into the idea of human exploration of Mars. For years, organizations like NASA and SpaceX have talked about the possibility of sending astronauts to the Red Planet. The argument has often been framed around engineering challenges, resource utilization, and human endurance. But with life potentially in the mix, the stakes become even higher. Humans on Mars could make decisions, adapt experiments in real time, and explore with a level of nuance that no robot can match. Astronauts could set up long-term laboratories, drill deeper into the subsurface, and examine geological contexts that machines might overlook. If microbial life still exists underground, humans may be the ones to finally discover it directly. At the same time, the possibility of Martian life forces us to think carefully about planetary protection. If Mars once had life, or still does, then sending humans there isn't just an engineering challenge, it's an ethical one. We must ensure we don't accidentally contaminate Mars with Earth microbes, which could both harm any native biology and ruin our chances of studying it. Conversely, we must also protect Earth from any Martian organisms that might hitch a ride home. Future exploration strategies will have to balance curiosity with caution, ensuring that humanity expands responsibly into the cosmos. This discovery also changes how other nations view Mars. Already, spacefaring countries like China, India, and the United Arab Emirates have launched their own Mars missions, and Perseverance's findings will only intensify global interest. International collaboration may grow, but so too might competition, as each nation wants to play a role in what could be the most important discovery in human history. Beyond the national programs, the private sector is poised to play a larger role than ever before. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin have set their sights on Mars colonization, and discoveries like these provide both motivation and justification for their ambitious visions. If Mars truly harbored life, or even still harbors remnants of it, then settling the planet becomes not just an engineering challenge, but a moral and scientific quest to coexist with another branch of biology. Humanity's first steps on Martian soil could echo the voyages of early explorers on Earth, but with far greater stakes. Not just crossing an ocean, but bridging the gulf between two worlds that once may have shared the spark of life. For centuries, humanity has gazed up at Mars and projected onto it every shade of curiosity, fear, and hope. 19th century observers thought they saw canals built by intelligent Martians. Writers and filmmakers wove stories of invasion, exploration, and discovery, turning Mars into a canvas for our deepest dreams and anxieties. But now, in the early 21st century, that age-old fascination has transformed into something tangible. Through the patient work of rovers, orbiters, and the scientists guiding them, the Red Planet is no longer just a distant myth. It is a real place whose secrets are slowly, methodically being revealed. Perseverance's findings mark a turning point in this journey. For the first time, we stand on the edge of answering one of the most profound questions ever asked. Are we alone? Even though the evidence is not yet conclusive, the weight of what has been found cannot be understated. Minerals that hint at biology, organic molecules that serve as the raw material of life, textures that resemble microbial processes. Taken together, they represent the closest brush we have ever had with extraterrestrial biology. Humanity has searched the stars for decades, building instruments, launching telescopes, and probing distant planets. But here, on our planetary doorstep, we may have finally come face to face with the ghost of another biosphere. Even if further analysis shows that the evidence points to abiotic chemistry, the fact remains that Mars is not a dead world in the scientific imagination. It is alive with questions, alive with mystery, and alive with the possibility that life is a universal phenomenon. What makes this moment so historic is not only the data, but the context. Never before has humanity come so close to crossing the boundary between speculation and confirmation. For generations, we have asked whether the story of life is unique to Earth, or whether it is written into the fabric of the cosmos. Perseverance has not yet answered definitively, but it has pulled back the curtain enough for us to glimpse what may lie behind it. In doing so, it has reminded us that science is not a series of final answers, but a process of unfolding discovery. Each rock drilled, each sample stored, each signal sent back across millions of kilometers of space brings us closer to the truth. This is not only a triumph of technology and perseverance, though both words apply perfectly. It is also a triumph of human curiosity. The desire to know, to seek, to push beyond the horizon is what brought Perseverance to Jezero crater in the first place. And it is what will one day bring humans to Mars, not only to look back at Earth as a distant blue star, but to kneel on alien soil and study firsthand the traces of what came before. The rover's findings are not the end of the story. They are the prologue to a much larger narrative that humanity is just beginning to write. As we reflect on this discovery, we should recognize the weight of what it symbolizes. Even if these samples prove to be chemical imitations rather than biological fossils, we have never been this close. And if, in the coming years, laboratory analyses confirm that life once existed on Mars, then this moment will be remembered as the turning point, the first whisper of confirmation that we are not alone in the universe. From that day forward, humanity will carry a new identity, not as a solitary species clinging to a rare world, but as members of a universe where life is possible, wherever the right conditions align. The red planet, long silent, may finally be speaking. Its rocks and sediments, shaped billions of years ago, may carry the story of microbes that lived, died, and fossilized in a time when Mars was young and vibrant. In uncovering those whispers, we are not just learning about another world, we are learning about ourselves, about our origins, and about our place in the cosmos. This is why Perseverance's discovery matters so deeply. It is not just a scientific milestone, it is a human one. The first step toward answering the oldest question may have already been taken, and the world watches as Mars slowly, carefully, and inevitably begins to give up its secrets. This video is for educational or entertainment purposes only, and information provided in the video may be incorrect. Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more such amazing videos.